5 elders. There are still many mysteries about them, but in chapter 1086, their true name was revealed. Their identities have been gradually revealed from the Battle of Onigashima in the Wano country saga. Therefore, today I would like to talk about this elder, a member of the 5 elders who seems to have been inspired by Gandhi, Ethan Baron v. Nusjuro. He stands out from the other members by always wearing a white robe and always carrying a sword. He might even sleep with the sword like Zoro.
Wake up! I'm bloody serious here.
His appearance invokes the style of Wano, and his sword is a typical Nihonto, the Japanese sword. He might also be originally from the country of Wano. Let's consider a scene of an empty throne room. Most of the swords there have a Western style, but there's one Japanese-style sword. It's likely that the owner of this sword is him or one of his ancestors. It's not clear yet whether he actually underwent an immortality procedure, so I don't know if the sword is his or an ancestor's. However, in chapter 395, their true faces were hidden when Dr. Clover spoke with the 5 elders during the O'Hara incident 22 years ago. This fact is somewhat strange, since their appearance had already been revealed in chapter 233. The reason why Oda-sensei hid their faces might be because they haven't changed at all since 22 years ago. In any case, I'm sure they were intentionally hidden to not reveal them to the reader. Apart from this, I would like to talk about another theory. Ethan Baron v. Nusjuro could belong to the Amatsuki family. I know, it might seem like an unlikely theory. However, in the process of formulating this theory, I managed to find various connections and evidence, so after hearing this theory, my precious viewers might be able to formulate another theory. If you find anything interesting in this video, please let me know. Anyway, welcome to another episode of Dawn Dusk. Through this channel, I'd like to share theories and analyses about One Piece, including plot developments and the author's thought process, presented in the original language. The owner of this channel also teaches Japanese to foreigners. In the future, we plan to provide online video lessons of Japanese language. For this reason, I've created a Telegram group for those interested in the Japanese language. So if you're interested,
join us. Oh, I'm Venus.
In any case, I hope to be able to grow this channel together with you as true Nakama. Let's take a look at a line from Nekomamushi. The Kazuki family from Wano is actually a family of stonemasons who have been cutting and working stone for generations. They still possess high technical skills. When I read this explanation in the original version, it seems to me that the Kazuki were not originally the shogun's family. In Japanese society before Edo, artisans did not have a very high status. It seems a bit strange that a shogunate family is described as artisanal. Moreover, in this scene, Odin says, "A long time ago, it was the Kazuki family that isolated this country from the outside world." If the Kazuki family was already a shogunate family before 800, it's natural that the Kazuki family decided to isolate the country. In that case, in this scene, he should have simply said, "The Wano country has closed the country." However, the emphasis on the Kazuki family in saying it was the Kozuki family that closed the country can be interpreted as an indication that they were not originally shoguns. They clearly had a significant role in the creation of the poneglyphs during the Void Century. Also, they likely had ties with an ancient kingdom, so after 800, they became shoguns and decided to protect the Wano country from a great power. Additionally, another element that seems incongruous to me is that the Mink tribe and the Kozuki family are considered brothers. If the Kozuki family were originally the rulers of Wano, then one should consider that the Minks and Wano are brothers. For this, I perceive the author's intention in creating only a fraternal bond between the Kozuki family and the Mink tribe. If the Kozuki family was not a shogunate family, which family would have played the role of shogun? Kurazumi. I'm joking. In truth, I think of the Amatsuki family. I believe they were the ones who ruled the Wano country. Moreover, I think the Amatsuki family is a clan that came from the moon. I know, Some of you might be tempted to close the video or prepare critical comments. This statement alone might make me an idiot theorist. However, there are many pieces of evidence and hidden clues in the story that support this theory. Let's look together. First of all, let's analyze the meaning of the Amatsuki family name. If you have already studied Japanese kanji, you might understand the meaning of Amazuki. This kanji represents the sky in a religious sense. Instead, this other kanji represents the moon. This could suggest that the Amatsuki came from the sky. Moreover, since God and religion were the main themes of the Sky Island saga, if the Amatsuki family had any relationship with the people of Sky Island, they would likely have used the kanji character ten instead of Sora, which has a divine or religious meaning. Let's observe Amatsuki's shadow. It might just be a coincidence, but the hairstyle of Amatsuki's shadow recalls the style of Skypiea. The Skypiea people raise the index and pinky above the head when giving a formal greeting. Why this custom exists is a mystery, but making two knots on the head might have meant something to them. Furthermore, according to One Piece Yellow, it is clearly stated that the wings of the inhabitants of Skypiea are only ornaments, so there's no need to explain the absence of wings in Toki. The weak point of this theory is that Toki's and Hiyori's hairstyles are not in the Skypiea style. Also, according to Gyukimaru, the Wano country was known in the world as a golden country a long time ago. I think this probably happened after the moon people arrived in the Blue Sea. Enel used gold and electricity to power the Maximus. This is probably inspired by the lunar technology that landed on Sky Island. In Enel's mini-adventure, it is revealed that the lunar people headed towards the Blue Sea in search of resources. From this evidence, it turns out that one of the resources that the moon people desired was gold for its high versatility. I theorized that the moon people arrived in the Blue Sea about 1,500 years ago. If you are interested in this theory, you can watch this video. Since the Golden City of Shandora prospered more than 1,100 years ago, it is possible that the Wano country also prospered as a golden country because the Amatsuki family had the technology to handle gold. I believe the Amatsuki family gained the position of shogun of the Wano country thanks to its enormous wealth and power. If you think about it this way, some of you might have a doubt. When Odin asked Toki where she was born, she answered, "I don't know. I only know that my parents' homeland is Wano. That's why I have no other destination but Wano." This suggests that Toki wasn't in Wano 800 years ago. The ability of the Toki Toki devil fruit sends people into the future, but it likely sends them to the same place. In fact, Kinnaman and the other Akazaya were teleported from Odin Castle and found themselves in the ruins of the same Odin Castle, but in a future time. So why wasn't Toki in Wano, although her parents were from Wano? I believe the reason lies in the fact that the Amatsuki family, originally a shogun family, split into a faction that stayed in Wano and one that left Wano. Probably even within the Amatsuki family, which obtained the role of shogun thanks to lunar technology, disagreements arose between those who wanted to establish a good relationship with the ancient kingdom and those who desired to rule the country and the world with their own technology. The faction that decided to stay in Wano became the daimyo supporting the Kazuki family. On the other hand, the Amatsuki faction that left Wano might have founded a new country, like Wapol. This country might be one of the 20 countries against the ancient kingdom, and he was the king at that time, or perhaps one of his ancestors. Because we still don't know whether the 5 elders are immortal. Additionally, in chapter 1037, Shepherd Jew Peter said,
So why has the world government given another name to that devil's fruit?
At this point, the subject is the world government. Even though he is part of the world government and at the top, he makes it someone else's issue by making the subject world government instead of we. So they could just be the descendants of 20 kings from 800 years ago. And now I will address the question many of you might be asking. If he really is from the Amatsuki family, why is his last name Ethan Baron V? This is probably the surname before it was changed to the Amatsuki name. They might have called themselves Amatsuki, by adapting their surnames to the Wano country. I was expecting the Amatsuki family to come from the moon. This means that they would have had to arrive in the Wano country via Sky Island. So what are the ways to go back and forth between the Sky Island and the ground? One is the knock-up stream, and the other is the High Ridge Crest. But I believe there was another way up until 800 years ago. Let's look at this scene from Enel's mini-adventure. They used balloons to go to the moon. Many balloons remain in the now-abandoned barren terminal. This could indicate that this place thrived as a trading point between Sky Island and the Blue Sea. Maybe it was created by people who came to the Blue Sea from the moon. Did you notice anything from this scene? Those who have read the original version may have noticed, because in English, the word used for this terminal is balloon, and his surname is Baron. But in Japanese, I'll show you. This name matches. Maybe this represents his ancestors from the moon. Furthermore, in the world of One Piece, most of the characters with Japanese-originated names are either from Wano or have a close connection to Wano country. Names like Semimaru, Denjiro, Momonosuke, Yamato, and so on. In that context, Nasujuro is entirely a Japanese name. Plus, Zoro pretended to be a Wano resident by calling himself Zoro Juro, hence the likelihood of Nasujuro being from Wano is extremely high. This could explain why we only see one Japanese-style sword in front of the empty throne. As another possibility, before the Kozuki family took control of Wano, it's possible that Wano itself was one of the 20 countries like Alabasta. Even though it was said that the Kozuki clan collaborated with Joy Boy to create the poneglyphs, it was not specified that Wano collaborated with the ancient kingdom. Consequently, Wano might have initially been a member of the 20 allied countries that gave rise to the celestial dragons. So the possibility that the Kozuki family took control of the country after the shogun family of that time headed to Mariageois is not to be ruled out. Also, after Luffy's defeat of Kaido, he says, "Then for now it won't open the country. Wano remains an impregnable fortress." He seems to have some familiarity with Wano's situation. If he or his ancestors originally lived in Wano, it would make sense that he knows so much about Wano's internal affairs, like the meaning of national isolation. In Chapter 1086, it's unveiled that Nasujuro holds the title Warrior God of Finance. Now, what was Wano country known as? The Country of Gold. It may not be just a coincidence that he still manages the financial affairs of the world government. Perhaps Toki's parents might have left Wano to try to persuade the Amatsuki faction that had left Wano. In any case, I have the impression that Oda-sensei is intentionally concealing something about the Amatsuki. In the Wano saga, we see all the daimyo appear, but none from the Amatsuki family. In my view, the secret of the Amatsuki will be unveiled when Momonosuke opens Wano in the future. I think the reason Oda-sensei didn't allow Momonosuke to open Wano during the Wano saga is because it's closely tied to the mystery of the Amatsuki family. And furthermore, the Amatsuki family is connected to the lost century. Since the final chapter is the most fitting time to reveal the secret of the lost century, the mystery of the Amatsuki family, which is intrinsically linked to this, has likely been purposely left in the shadows. To support this theory, Zunisha could represent a key element. Zunisha could potentially be an ancestor of the Amatsuki. Why do I say this? Remember the shared vision between Zunisha and Momonosuke? How is this possible? Perhaps because they're bound by blood. In the movie film Red, Usopp managed to share his vision with Yasopp. But do you remember that there was another pair capable of sharing sight? Katakuri and Brûlé. However, Shanks and Luffy can't share vision, even though Luffy's observation haki is trained to the point where he can see into the future. This implies that there's a high chance that blood ties are necessary to share vision. Based on my analysis, there are two conditions to share vision. First, observation haki. Second, blood relations. According to the Vivre card, Momonosuke is capable of using observation haki, and the other condition might be a blood tie. Therefore, we can hypothesize that Zunisha is an ancestor of Momonosuke. In this case, there are two possibilities. Zunisha was either a member of the Kazuki or Amatsuki family. According to the theory presented in this video, Zunisha might be an Amatsuki. Why? As I theorized, the Amatsuki family comes from the moon. In other words, they were the first to land on the Sky Island when they descended into the blue ocean. Do you know what Zunisha's favorite food is? This is indicated on the Vivre card. It's Sky Island apples.